They told you the story was already finished. They told you the answers were clear, the chapter closed, the conclusions settled. And if you believed that without question, if you scrolled past, nodded along, and moved on, then this story is already about you. Because what happens after a public tragedy often says more about us than the tragedy itself. This is not a rant. This is not gossip. This is a documentary-style account of how influence, grief, loyalty, and responsibility collide in the modern media age, and how silence or applause from the audience can quietly shape the damage left behind. Before we go any further, pause for just a moment. If you care about long-form investigations like this, stories that take their time, that refuse shortcuts, make sure you're subscribed. This channel exists because people like you choose depth over noise. Subscribing is support for conversations that don't fit into a headline. Now let's continue. Charlie Kirk was not an obscure figure. He was a recognizable political voice, a movement builder, a symbol to supporters and critics alike. His death shocked millions, not just because of who he was, but because of how abruptly his life ended. In moments like these, people search for meaning. They search for reasons. They search for someone to blame. That instinct is human. But what comes next is a choice. In the hours and days after the news broke, facts were still emerging. Authorities spoke carefully. Those closest to Kirk urged restraint. And for a brief window, there was space for mourning. That space did not last. Online, speculation spread faster than confirmation. Questions turned into conclusions, hints became claims, and before the full picture was even assembled, a new narrative began to circulate, one driven not by evidence, but by implication. This is where Candace Owens enters the story. Owens is not a fringe voice. She commands a massive audience, built over years of sharp commentary and unapologetic confidence. When she speaks, millions listen. That reach comes with power, and power always carries responsibility, whether acknowledged or not. In her commentary following Kirk's death, Owens began raising questions that went far beyond what authorities or verified sources were saying. She suggested hidden motives. She implied involvement by powerful figures. She connected dots that were not confirmed by facts. To some viewers, it felt brave. To others, it felt reckless. But what matters most is this: those words did not exist in a vacuum. Every suggestion, every raised eyebrow, every just asking questions moment landed on an audience already emotionally charged. Grief lowers skepticism, loyalty sharpens defensiveness, and algorithms reward escalation, not caution. Here's the part that should make you uncomfortable. Many people shared those claims not because they had verified them, but because they fit a worldview, because they felt emotionally satisfying, because outrage feels like action. And then something unexpected happened. Rob McCoy, a pastor who knew Charlie Kirk personally, spoke out. This was not a political opponent. This was not a media critic looking for clicks. This was someone from within Kirk's own circle. McCoy publicly rebuked the conspiracy-driven commentary. He called it inappropriate. He urged respect. He reminded the public that a real family was grieving, not characters in an online storyline. That moment matters because it exposed a fracture that many didn't want to acknowledge. This wasn't about truth versus lies across political lines. This was about responsibility versus attention within the same camp. Law enforcement, meanwhile, identified a suspect and described a timeline consistent with a lone individual acting independently. No evidence emerged supporting the broader theories circulating online. Those closest to Kirk echoed the same message again and again: stop turning loss into spectacle. And yet, the theories continued to spread. Why? Because once an audience is invested, walking it back feels like betrayal, because admitting uncertainty doesn't perform as well as confidence, because some viewers reward escalation with loyalty, shares, and clicks. Now here's the question no one likes to ask. What role do you play in this? Did you share before you checked? Did you comment before you listened? Did you reward speculation because it felt emotionally aligned, not because it was verified? It's easy to point fingers at influencers, harder to look at the audience that amplifies them. This story is not about silencing voices. It's about understanding the weight of influence. When someone with millions of followers frames unverified claims as meaningful possibility, the impact is real. Reputations are affected, families are hurt, and trust in shared reality erodes just a little more. And once that trust cracks, it doesn't come back easily. This is why moments like Rob McCoy's response matter, because they remind us that restraint is not weakness, that respect is not censorship, that sometimes the most courageous thing is to say, "We don't know yet," and that's okay. If this made you uncomfortable, that's the point. Discomfort is often the first step towards accountability. If you believe media figures should be held to standards, not just rewarded for intensity, subscribe. If you believe audiences share responsibility for what gets amplified, subscribe. If you believe long-form, careful storytelling still matters, subscribe and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because the next time a tragedy unfolds in real time, the question won't just be what they said, it will be what we allowed to spread. What followed next did not happen on a stage or in a press conference. It happened quietly, through metrics, timestamps, and edits that most viewers never notice. As the days passed, some videos were adjusted, titles softened, thumbnails changed, language shifted just enough to create distance without admitting error. To a casual observer, it looked like routine optimization. To anyone tracking the timeline closely, it looked like caution setting in after the reach had already been achieved. This is a pattern worth examining. When narratives travel faster than verification, the correction, if it comes at all, rarely travels as far. A claim can rack up millions of views in a matter of hours. A clarification, issued days later, reaches a fraction of that audience. The imbalance is structural, not accidental. And that structure rewards one thing above all else: certainty, even when certainty isn't earned. Legal analysts have pointed out that public speculation involving named individuals carries risk, even when framed as opinion. The more specific the implication, the thinner the line becomes. That reality alone explains why some voices eventually lower the temperature, even if the initial message remains online, still circulating, still clipped, still shared, without context. But here's the part that rarely gets discussed. When a creator steps back, the audience doesn't always follow. Instead, fragments of the original message take on a life of their own. Short clips migrate across platforms, captions remove nuance, tone gets replaced with assumption, and suddenly, the originator no longer controls the meaning of what they started. At that point, accountability becomes abstract. Supporters argue that questions are healthy, critics argue that damage has already been done, and the person at the center of the storm becomes almost irrelevant compared to the machine now running on its own momentum. Meanwhile, families, colleagues, and communities are left navigating a reality where strangers debate their lives as content, not out of malice, but out of distance. It's easier to speculate about people you'll never meet. This is where silence becomes its own statement. Some influential figures chose not to engage at all. No rebuttals, no threads, no appearances. That restraint frustrated audiences hungry for resolution, but it also underscored a different philosophy. Not every claim deserves oxygen, and not every moment needs commentary. Yet silence has consequences too. In the absence of authoritative voices, speculation fills the gap. Viewers become investigators, comment sections turn into courtrooms, confidence replaces competence, and the cycle continues. Platforms benefit from this. Longer watch times, higher engagement, more emotional investment. Outrage and suspicion keep people watching longer than patience ever could. This isn't a moral judgment, it's a design reality. Which brings us back to you, again. Not as an accusation, as a mirror. Every click teaches the system what to promote next. Every share tells it what deserves repetition. Even watching something just to see counts as a signal. None of this requires bad intentions, it only requires participation. And participation is constant. Some viewers began asking different questions, not about hidden actors or secret plans, but about standards, about what should happen when influence outruns evidence, about whether loyalty should override restraint, about whether being early is worth being wrong. Those questions don't trend as well, but they linger longer. Because unresolved stories aren't always missing information. Sometimes they're missing accountability. As this case fades from the headlines, it won't truly be over. It will resurface the next time another high-profile event unfolds, the next time an audience is asked to choose between patience and immediacy, between curiosity and care. And when that moment comes, the precedent set here will matter, not because of what was proven, but because of what was normalized. So the story remains open. Not waiting for a final revelation, but waiting for a decision about what kind of media we reward, about what kind of voices we trust, and whether we're willing to slow down when slowing down feels like losing. That choice doesn't belong to any single commentator. It belongs to the audience watching right now.